All right, Dustin, the juice is loose indeed. People, we are back. It is a surprise recap show coming to you live from the Talkin TV network. Dustin I, this is another thing. We've been waiting 2 years for the return of the show, and it looks like a lot of other people have, given that this, again, is another one of those much touted that HBO loves to tout, super high-rated premieres. We were talking about the premiere of Secession Season 3. Dustin, do you have anything to say before we get into this?
The juice is loose, and I fucking love this show. Let's do this.
The juice is loose indeed. Let's fucking do this. All right, Dustin, before we get this started, just be honest with me. Just tell me. So was that the first time that I've ever texted like one of those like one-liners that I know we from a show or a movie that we both love, that we both have watched for the first, like, was this the first time that I've ever done that to you first?
Maybe it's the first time you did that and I saw it.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Sounds about right, is the all honesty. But people, we're talking about the premiere of Succession Season 3. Again, for anybody who has been under a rock for these last 2 years or just, again, kind of missed the boom that this show had during COVID, this show premiered back in August of 2018. It was kind of right on the cusp of Game of Thrones' final season. People weren't yet sure at the time if this was going to be HBO's next quite big it show, but it has slowly evolved into that. I think it's safe to say, ultimately, this is a story about a fictionalized media family that runs one of the largest media companies in the world. It has versions and allusions and references to the Fox family, to the Trump family, to basically any sort of like kind of upper echelon, super high based white collar Illuminati-esque like kind of super white family essentially. And obviously we have people have been talking about the show since the Gangbusters season 2 finale that aired just about 2 years ago, roughly back in October of 2019. Everyone was super highly anticipating the third season, and then the pandemic hit. Everything went away for a while. It was Dustin. Be honest with me. Was the fact that we weren't going to get new Succession in 2020 the most depressing thing of all the things that got delayed from 2020? Was us not being able to get the third season of Succession after that Gangbuster season 2 finale one of the worst things? Because it was for me.
For me, like out of like film and TV, of shit
like
that was supposed, like that if COVID didn't interfere with everything, was supposed to come out. Yes, by far. Like film and TV, easily. This was my most anticipated thing.
Absolutely.
Because I got into this show like a few months before season 2 started.
Yep.
So I gave it a chance and I got right into it. And I was like, holy shit, this is hilarious. It's dramatically effective. Everyone on this show is great. Every character is great. Even if the characters are unlikable, every performance is great. And then season 2 came, and it might be the best season of a television show.
It
might be.
It's definitely up there. This was a show that I'll miss. So this one that famously, again, but for anybody who doesn't know, again, Dustin and I have a long history of specifically of Dustin pushing me to watch stuff that I may not necessarily want to watch, and then every time I do, I'm 9.5 out of 10 times blown away every single time he recommends me. And this was one of those things where I'd heard a lot about this show, and it was right when season 1 came out, like kind of like before like the hype wave of season 2 happened. Because season 1, there was like, it was one of those things where it was rumbling in the air, but like the people who watched it really liked it, but it wasn't quite like the super big echelon kind of must-watch water cooler show that it is now. So it definitely took me a little bit of time to watch the first season. You literally we were hanging out in your room and you literally pulled your laptop out and you were like, okay, we're watching the goddamn first episode. I'm like, all right. Then I watch it. I'll be honest, I wasn't entirely sold after the first episode, but I definitely was like, okay, this is definitely something that I can get into. And about halfway through the first season is when I'm like, all right, I don't know what this show is, but I'm locked in and I'm ready to go. And now, after having waited for 2 years for it, after having watched the first 2 seasons entirely throughout COVID, I can safely say that this is probably the best show on the air right now. Like, Barry came close while it was up there. We've had a myriad of different miniseries that have come and gone throughout, like, in the last 2 years. But I think it's safe to say that this is easily, like, one of the best shows on the air right now. So now, before we actually get into this new episode, right, we're not really going to do like a recap of the last 2 seasons because, quite frankly, there was a lot that happened. And again, if you're watching the show, we're hoping that, you've seen the first 2 seasons or whatever. So we'll make references to the first 2 seasons throughout the course of this discussion. But for the most part, this is going to be primarily focused on the new episode. But Dustin, before we get started, though, what I did wanted to ask is, so you touched a little bit kind of on your brief general overall thoughts of the show in general. But so my question for you is, besides just the fact that, we just came off a year of COVID and a year of people not really having that much to watch, right? But what is it to kind of before COVID, kind of the thing that was drawing people into this show to begin with? Like, what do you think it is about this show specifically that kind of makes it like the next like must-see like big show?
Well, it's got to be the writing and like just how rich the characters are, and just the fact that it has a sense of humor that strong and distinct already. 2 seasons and an episode in, like it's nothing but enthralling for me personally, and especially what you were saying, like it's kind of a parody sort of the Murdochs and the Trumps, like kind of combined, I guess, but it takes that kind of recognizability of those families and it sort of turns it on its head, but it feels realistic enough to where it really does engross you. And maybe that's the reason, but I think it's the writing. If it's shitty writing, that's what turns me off to a show. So the writing and the performances combined make it a perfect show.
Yeah, definitely. For me, I don't get me wrong. The writing on this show is easily like some of the best I've ever seen on television. And like, again, we're coming off of, again, roughly 2 decades now of like peak like writing and television. Like, again, the biggest thing that people have been saying about the last couple of years is that like TV has officially kind of taken the place of all the films that people like us in particular gravitate towards, considering the fact that, again, like you look at the majority of the movies that people are watching, like that god-awful fucking piece of shit Halloween movie that just came out this past week had a fucking $50 million opening weekend in theaters, which is ridiculous.
Well, because people didn't know what Peacock was, and if they heard about it, they were like, what is that, a porn site?
Like, it was interesting because it was like probably one of the first instances where it's like, okay, a simultaneous streaming and theater drop, not in the middle of the pandemic, actually ended up benefiting a movie. But I have a feeling this is going to be that rare instance where that does actually work, but most of the time that's not going to going forward. But again, like just as far as sensibilities go towards this kind of stuff, right? Obviously writing and specifically the sharpness of the writing and how much of a clear view that Jesse Armstrong and his team of writers have towards these characters, right? I'll admit, that's kind of something that we've kind of become used to with HBO, because HBO has kind of developed that kind of caliber of style in the last 20 years that it's been a thing, right? But I think for me, the thing that stands out the most about the show as far as kind of separating it from the rest of TV ilk is what you mentioned about the comedy and the writing. But for me, at least, how they're able to use that as a veneer kind of in order to like really sell the drama. Because we talked about this a lot, right? As just in recent years and just like on various amounts of podcasts, right? Comedy obviously being the foray into drama. But this is probably like the first real instance that I've seen, like quite possibly ever, where the comedy is really used as the facade to accentuate the drama. Because this is one of those instances where the dramatic moments in this moment, like they hit home so hard in so many different unexpected ways. Because like Dustin, you and I, we've talked about this a lot, right? You're definitely more of a comedy guy. I would definitely consider myself more of a drama guy when it comes to this stuff. It's usually a lot harder to sell me on a funny show than it is to sell me on a serious show. But for this show to hit so hard and so perfectly on kind of both sides of the aisle, like I really can't think of anything else that's come close to this. Like even like the most experimental Netflix shows that came out in the past were still very much kind of hedged in their own like kind of genre-based lane. But this to me is really the first show that is actually able to play both sides and arguably come off stronger as a result of it.
Yeah, because it might be the best show of all time. That's why. Because no, it might because it is a drama. Yeah, because it's a drama, right? But it's funnier than any sitcom right now.
Easily.
So, but that's a testament to the writing, and that's what I was saying, is that like the fact that it is so funny really connects to a lot of people, but it also doesn't distract from the drama. It intertwines with it, and the characters aren't being funny just to be funny. Those are the characters, all right? And if they happen to say something goofy, that happens to be really in the moment and funny, okay? But like, yeah, I think it's just a testament to the writing and That's why it's really popular, is because it has a great sense of that L to the OG rap.
Oh man.
Like if season 2 didn't have that, it'd still be a great season, but like people still wouldn't remember it as much. But it still has like better dramatic moments than any other drama on television. That's why it won Best Drama last year at the Emmys.
Rightfully so. Absolutely rightfully so. It's so funny too, because it's funny because I was in the day before the premiere came out, right? So I was hanging with my friend, and we were watching a couple of the episodes of season 1 to kind of, just to go or refresh myself. It had been so long since I watched it. We watched episodes 4, and I think we made it all the way through 7, if I remember. No, 8, because Tom's bachelor party. So we made it all the way through Tom's bachelor party 8. Oh my god, I still can't say it. Like, what was the line that he said in order to describe his encounter with the hooker? What is that? A closed circuit of sexual activity or something like that? Something stupid like that. And so we were talking about it back and forth, and she hadn't seen any of season 2 yet. And I told her, I'm like, do you mind? I'm like, trust me, as good as season 1 is, and she thought it was incredible. I'm like, season 2 is even better. And I'm like, do you mind if I play you a clip just to prove my point? She's like, sure. And I played the L to the OG crap, and she was dying laughing through the entire thing. I'm like, all right, mission succeeded. Like that clip, like, first off, if we could just kind of use this as our foray into the characters first and foremost, like just Kendall rapping to the Beastie Boys as his introduction to the show. Like, can you think of a better introduction to a character on a TV show? Like, I'm not kidding when I say this. Up there with Tony Soprano staring at the nude statue in Melfi's office, Walter White driving the RV down the road. As far as I'm concerned, it's those 3 as far as top 3 like main character in like a prestige TV
I
drama.
think Secession has the strongest one.
You think it tops it? Make the case. Make the case. Do it.
Because it's just so, that character, that's what he is. Like, he's a hip-hop loving fucking, white collar asshole business guy. That's what he does to amp himself up. Like, that was his introduction. I love that shit. And it's just, the Beastie Boys, that's perfect. That's perfect. It's a New York group. It's it just goes with the show, goes with the scene. It's just, the soundtrack on this show is just phenomenal too. Like the score that Nicholas Brittle.
Nicholas Bertel. I think it's the first score, and again, I know this is pretty recent still, but like no other show before Game of Thrones really had me sitting through like every single the score and wanted to see the opening credit sequence through every single episode. Like again, because you would get like a 5-second thing with Breaking Bad, but like even as much as I love The Sopranos and Boardwalk Empire, after a couple episodes, I'm like, all right, skip the opening credits. I just want to get to the episode, But Game of Thrones maybe want to sit through the intro, and this is the first show since Game of Thrones with how extensive and how intricate and how well and like the score itself tells a story. That's how awesome it is. Like with the piano kind of underlying, like the kind of oh my god, what's the term? So many words that are just floating through my head right now. Underlying cynicism and underlying kind of depth and kind of evil that these people are capable of. It captures it so well, and set against the backdrop of like the flashbacks, like the the kind of 8mm old homeschool video mixed with like the kind of current drone shots of New York. It's like this really interesting kind of mix back and forth as far as like the kind of innocence lost versus what they kind of gave it up to get.
And like that footage that we see in the credit sequence, it's just kind of like, is that even them? Like,
I don't know.
Like it's like even creepier, like, because it's like it could be like the fucking real family footage of some sort, because it looks fucking eerie. But no, but I'll say this about the opening credits. I was with you on that, and then the show started to get like amazing, like unstoppably amazing. So I have to skip it every time, because I just need to see what this show is going for.
Yeah, it's funny because because for this premiere, I was considering. I'm like, all right, I just want to get to the. I'm like, I want to get to the action. And then as soon as that score picked up, I'm like, nope, I gotta hear it. I'm telling you,
it might have the best like theme for a show, like
to be made.
Like an actual like a theme for a show, not a theme song, but a theme.
Right.
Like this rivals The Office for me, and that is saying
knowing you, that is
saying something.
That's crazy, honestly, for you to say that. That's actually nuts, because again, Chris around the Talkin TV network, Chris likes to tout himself as the biggest Office fan. Nah, I'm gonna call it right now. Like, Chris, I don't know if you're watching this. You got nothing on this guy right here. Nothing. So
I'm a big Office fan.
Yeah. So let's break it down. So I just want to do like kind of like a quick overview of the characters before we actually get into the episode and kind of where we left off with them recently. So obviously let's lead it off with our 2 leads, Logan and Kendall. So we obviously left off with the season 2 finale, right? Logan had officially made the decision Brian Cox's Logan, obviously, that in order to kind of appease the DC people that were coming after him, they needed to offer them up a blood sacrifice. And after Shiv goes out of her way to beg Logan to spare Tom, because for the long time, Tom is definitely on the chopping block for pretty obvious reasons, I think it's safe to say. He officially selects Kendall. Kendall goes to DC and drops the bomb of all bombs by instead implicating Logan. I mean, again, I'll be honest, I missed this moment in the moment when it aired, but I still remember like the social media boom when this moment actually happened. It was totally out of nowhere. No one was expecting it. Like, Dustin, break down your thoughts, like, when that actually happened. Like, did you see it coming?
I did a little bit. A little bit. I was hoping, in the back of my mind throughout season 2, I was hoping they were building to him eventually getting out of Brian Cox's trap. But like, yeah, when he did that, that was the most satisfying thing in the world, because that really was, that whole season 2 was a perfect build-up and a perfect arc for that reveal at the end. And like, yeah, that was great. And it set up the perfect anticipation for the 3rd season. And this opening episode couldn't be more
good.
Like, I texted my friend, I was like, how is this still amazing? Like, This is still amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of insane, especially after obviously the COVID break. It's almost unbelievable. Now, my only other question is, because the whole thing about Kendall's arc throughout season 2 is Kendall is pretty much in cuckold in his dad's position. Like, he is pretty much like becomes Logan's whipping boy for the entirety of the season. So my question for you is, at what moment do you think the gear goes off in Kendall's head? And he realized, like, do you think it was something he was slowly planning, like, throughout the entire time from his recovery all the way up? Or do you think there was a moment in season 2, like, during the term where he came to that decision? Like, where it's something with Greg revealing the copies of the documents to him? Like, what do you think it was?
Well, yeah, didn't Greg reveal that in season 1?
Like, if I'm remembering correctly, the whole thing is I think that Greg revealed it to someone at Tom and Shiv's wedding. I thought that was
Kevin. I thought that was Kendall.
It was Kendall? Okay, that's what I mean. Like I said, my memory's fuzzy. So
yeah, so unless like he like remembered that, and then maybe in the combination of that dinner table scene on the boat on the last episode,
right,
where they're all arguing and turning on each other, and Greg might get thrown under the bus too, maybe. With Tom, it's implied. So maybe Kendall had that in the back of his mind, and then his dad talked to him and then decided that he was the one, and then Kendall flipped it and made that
Kendall
decision.
Was like, all right, I got to do this.
That's my theory. I don't know, but like, I think in that moment, that's when he officially decided. When his dad said he's not a killer, he's like, all right, I'll show you who a fucking killer is.
Right. And obviously, again, with the famed Judas kiss, again, which has become like one of the most meme moments of the show. Yeah, I tend to agree with that, definitely, because, again, that's kind of the interest of kind of following Kendall. Now, I don't want to throw in any potential skepticism or anything like that, because, again, like, this is a show that we've each very much been anticipating for, but we obviously know that Kendall is the self-destructive type. Again, it seems like every single time he's about to make a major move towards Logan, he trips over his own feet and gets in his own way. First, with the whole going out to see what's it called, Amala, the other, the bedridden board member in season 1 that caused him to miss his own proxy vote. Then obviously the whole thing with the kid at the end of season 1 when him and Stewie were about to bear hug Logan, and that whole mess. And now we have in this premiere, obviously, Kendall seems fired back up. He seems ready to go, but he almost seems like he's moving too quick, and he isn't actually stopping to consider kind of the gravity of his actions. Because, like, obviously this moment has been talked about, but he gets in the car with Carolina and Greg after the press conference, and Carolina kind of reminds him, is like, yeah, you're still driving a company car. You actually think that Waystar would still, like, kind of not revoke your company privileges after you dropped a bombshell like that? Like, it does, sir. And then just, like, the way that he's plowing through the PR teams and the way that he kind of, it's almost like, it's not almost like until Sana Lathan sits down with him, it kind of makes him realize, it's like, you want to do, it's like you want to burn down your dad, but you want to preserve the company, and you want to make yourself look like the hero. I don't really see how there's a kind of a way that you accomplish all three of those in one. And I think that's going to be kind of the big moment of interest this season, is seeing if Kendall is able to balance out those three as far as like letting his kind of self-destructive, like kind of, I'll call it revenge act against Logan, get the better of him potentially being like a good company CEO and businessman. Because that's something that we talked about with Kendall, right? Kendall is effectively kind of no better than the rest of these guys, right? The whole thing is that, like, oh, Kendall slightly separates himself from the rest of them, but he really doesn't. He really is just as much of a piece of shit as the rest of these guys. But the whole thing is, because he's got kind of like that broken bird, the fact that he's constantly like trounced upon and trampled upon by everyone else, you always kind of like have that sense of, oh, you're rooting for him. But now that he's kind of like taking the offensive here, it's almost like, oh no, what are you doing here, Ken? You know, it's like take a couple steps back, you know, like, I don't know. What's your take on all that?
I don't really agree. I think he's actually like high on life in this fucking episode, because the way he was like interrupting, like,
he's definitely
the PR,
high on something. I'll tell you that much.
The PR thing. No, I know. Well, I don't think he's high on drugs. I think he's high, like, this turning on his dad, like, awoken him. Yeah. Like, I think it just totally awoken him. I think maybe he's fooling me with his confidence, but I think he knows what he's doing for the most part. And I don't think they let us in completely on what he's going to do, obviously, for build-ups to the next episodes. But we'll find out sooner or later. It's definitely going to follow his self-destructive pattern, maybe. Or it could turn to another kid. We have Shiv, who's very kind of self-destructive on her own, because she only looks out for herself. Like, she pretty much got herself fired by Eric Bogosian and that shit.
Pretty much.
And what she's doing on this episode is completely self-serving. She's the most self-serving character in this show, arguably, besides Logan. But it's anybody could self-destruct, in my opinion, on this show. Anybody.
Yeah, but I guess just because Kendall's just had the biggest track record and most kind of obvious and biggest moments of self-destruction. Like, you know, whenever Shiv does
I feel like the examples you brought up were, like, just bad luck. Like, I don't necessarily think it was his fault that he lost the board meeting. It's not his fault that a bunch of, like, everybody else in the boardroom that didn't stick their hand up were pussies. Like, they were just being pussies.
Well,
like,
so that's
not his fault.
That specific instance is a combination of, I think, the fact that he didn't actually need to go and see the board member because he would have had enough votes regardless. And it's the fact so then the only fact of the matter of having to overcome is whether Logan's in the room or not. Because again, it's just Logan's presence.
Yeah, and Logan
that sways everyone.
Wasn't supposed to be in the room.
Right, exactly.
So the fact that he was just fucked up to begin with. So it's just like everything was just unlucky for him. And the thing with the kid in London or whatever, that, you know, the manslaughter case, that wasn't his fault either, because the kid fucking swerved the wheel. It's like he's just always in these fucking insane scenarios that aren't really his fault entirely. Not entirely. Was he high? Yeah, but did he fucking swerve the wheel like that into a pond? No. That was the kid. He died. I'm that guy. I'm sorry. I feel bad for Kendall, and I want him to win. He's not a great person, but he's trying, okay?
He's not great, but he's trying. I'm going to coin that. But so the only other thing that I want to bring up about Kendall before we move on to the other characters is, obviously, we have the infamous line, right? We talked about the Juice is Loose line, and I already know. I already have a great feeling about the Kendall one-liners this season, because they're going from the revolution will be live in the trailer already had me like, all right, well, whatever Kendall's gonna be dropping this season, like, let's go. We need a mixtape for it.
When he said the OJ shit, where he was just like,
well, that's the thing. That's what I wanted to bring
up. My jaw dropped.
So Greg brings up, right? So Greg brings up the thing where it's like, wow, this is like OJ, but like if OJ didn't kill anyone, and Kendall has the moment where he looks at him and is like, who says that didn't kill anybody? Do you think, is he like just so in his own head that he's kind of just like thinking of Logan, or do you think that he's bringing up like the kid from the end of season 1, like for the first time, and like finally acknowledging it, like something that he has very much kept down before?
I think he's acknowledging it.
I think he's acknowledging it. You think he's going for it. All right.
I think he's, like I said, he's awoken.
Yeah.
He don't give a shit anymore.
To say the least. So now I guess the only thing that we'll have left to see is whether Logan is going to use that in any way, shape, or form against him as the battle for the throne.
That's the only thing I'm worried about, because if this show pulls that shit after last season, where they're like, don't worry about it, and then bring it up,
no real person involved.
Yeah, but that's so exactly. So if they do that shit, like a fucking, like, Billions would do that shit, and I like Billions, but Billions would do that in a heartbeat, because they just like repeating itself. Right. All right. Succession is better than that. They don't need to go down that fucking road with the deer on it and then swerve into a fucking cliche lake. Okay.
Yeah. Right. They're not the morning show, but anyways.
Exactly.
That show's fucking winning the torpedo world. I don't know what the hell happened to that second season. Good Lord. Yikes. Oh my God. You want to talk about a 180 turn? Jesus Christ.
Yikes.
But anyways, we're not here to talk about the morning show. We're here to talk about Succession. So next, let's move on to Shiv real quick, because I want to talk about her. I think Shiv is probably my most problematic character on this entire show, because you're right. She is entirely self-serving. But I think the problem that I have with that character, that I don't really have with any other character on the show. Even Roman, who annoyed the shit out of me in the first couple episodes, really won me over as time went on. I guess my problem with Shiv is she's this character, she's the only character on the show that it seems like the writers can't really make up their minds as far as what they want her to do, because they have her being this incredibly smart, savvy, very self-centered, very like kind of politically edged. She's not really in the inner circle. She doesn't really want anything to do with it because she kind of has this better understanding than Kendall and Roman and knows that there's nothing in it for her, but yet she still seems to be allow herself to be kind of pushed and pulled in each and every direction. Like the whole thing with the affair in season 1, and then obviously the whole thing where she actually allows herself to be manipulated by her dad in season 2, and then the whole thing with Tom at the end of season 1. Like, why is she begging for Tom? I don't know. It's like, it's one of those characterizations where it feels like all the pieces are there, but there's something missing with the through line that kind of ties them all together. And especially I feel like that is could not be better represented than in this premiere when she goes to see Sana Lathan after she supposedly has been given the position, right, before Logan quickly revokes it, right, because that's the whole thing is Logan obviously is planning on pulling back and plans to announce an interim successor, which could be any one of a couple different people, you know, Roman, Shiv, Tom, Gerri. I think that Karl tries and fails once again in order to put himself up for it. That's not going to happen. But I guess, but like the scene when she goes to visit Sana Lathan, and Sana Lathan basically straight up point blank tells her, yeah, we're not actually that good friends, and I don't actually gain anything by helping you out. And Shiv kind of has that breakdown. Like, I don't know, like, what's kind of your take on just that whole scene, and just like your take on Shiv as a character?
I just feel like Jeremy's strong. Well, Kendall got to her first, so it's just like, you know.
I think it's more than that, though.
Early bird gets the worm.
I agree. That's definitely it. But I think there's more to it than that. I think
maybe she don't like Shiv very much. Maybe, but I don't know. I just like I didn't really read that much into it, other than Shiv trying to just like she's not get you know, trying to see her for legal counsel for her dad. She's trying to get her for herself.
Right. She's trying to make sure that she's that she like has a dog in her fight. But I guess for me, the reason why I'm reading so much into it is because that Shiv literally pulls the woman card, where she's like, wow, okay, we're both kind of, you know, upper echelon, you know, women of power. We got to look out for each other. And Sana Lathan is kind of look at her and she's like, really? You're going to do that? You know? And I just feel like there's kind of something else that's going to be happening there. And I also have a strong motivation that, again, because Shiv is all about herself and she's all about kind of in her own shadow. And this also plays into the posters that we saw too, when those 3 posters were released of Kendall and Logan on either side of the hallway walking down, looking at each other, and everyone else is kind of spread around them. But then you have the 3 different iterations where the other characters are kind of split on either side, but in different groups. So like it doesn't give you a clear idea of who's on whose side. So I definitely think that, especially given the footage that we get in the trailers, that Shiv is definitely going to Kendall next in order to kind of feel out and find out what her options are, especially now that she finds out that she's off the table, especially considering that the way that it's played out, obviously, it makes it think that, like, oh, Logan dropped her the minute that she failed at getting Sana Lathan on their side. But there's definitely more than that, because Logan always has a secondary reasoning for why he does everything. So I guess that's kind of like where I'm coming from with that sequence. And like, I definitely think that I don't know, because last season felt like so much like, again, like building Shiv up. I have a feeling that we're in for a big Shiv unraveling this season. Like this is where we're going to see Shiv at her lowest this season, the way that we saw Kendall kind of last season. That I think is the clear takeaway from everything that we saw with her.
She's going to kill a guy.
You think so?
Yes.
Oh, no, man. Who you have any bets on who you think is just going to be another rando? Like,
no,
Kendall,
I don't know. Yeah, most likely a rando, but I'm being semi-joking right now. No, I just think, it's probably going to be a downward spiral. I think Roman actually is probably going to he might come out the best one this season.
Roman has the best chance.
Roman
definitely has the best chance. And that goes into kind of, again, a lot of the stuff that we were going into the season, both from interviews with Kieran Culkin, just with the general kind of direction that the show was going as far as how kind of each season and where they focus. Where season 1, the focus seemed to be all on Kendall, and season 2, the focus seemed to be all on Shiv. And now this season, just with everything that we saw from Roman, specifically in this episode, and everything that we know that we're gonna do, we're gonna follow with Roman. Like, obviously, we know that Roman's gonna be kind of the foray when they bring in Alexander Skarsgård into the show, right? As the tech, what is he, like the tech billionaire? I think they're trying to look as potentially one of the bailout boards. Like, I have a feeling we're in, and again, basically we have hard written proof to go off of that this is going to be a very Roman focused season, which honestly, with how much of growth that character had in the last season and a half, I'm definitely in for.
Oh yeah, for sure. And Kieran Culkin keeps getting better. Sarah Snook also keeps getting better too. That's why that character is bearable because, to watch because she's such a great actress and ahead of her time. But Kieran Culkin is just so perfectly cast in this show.
Is this the best Kieran Culkin performance ever?
Yeah.
You know how much I love him in Scott Pilgrim, but
he's
like
great.
this, yeah.
He gets better in that every time. But no, he's a great actor and maybe the best Culkin brother. And I just like what they're doing with that character. The way he strategized in this episode was very smart. The way he's like, all right, if you're not going to give it to me, put me under Gerri's wing for a couple of years, maybe.
And that's why he didn't get it. I'm telling you, that's the reason why he didn't get it was if he. Again, like the whole begging and pleading thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know that like that doesn't do well, but I'm telling you, the minute that he brought up Gerri's name, as far as, okay, put me up under Gerri, that's when Logan said no, because that was when Roman exposed himself. That's when he was like, okay, he kind of revealed his cards and showed that like he kind of does care and have a stake in Gerri, even if Gerri doesn't necessarily have the same thought process about him, and that definitely may be why, because again, Gerri, from what I've seen of her so far on the show, definitely seems to not be as into Roman as Roman is into her, and she much more so seems to be into whatever the fuck is going on with that relationship there, more so for the thrill, versus Roman definitely seems to be like finding something in Gerri that he has definitely been missing throughout the entirety of his life. Like, we all know that all the Roy siblings are so damaged, like arguably kind of just as much from their mom as they are from their dad, because of, again, with the brief amount of time that we spend with lady, what's her name? I forget their mom's name. What's the actress's name? Harriet Walter, is that it? Harriet Walter character. Like, she is just so cold and so withheld and so for me and so just like, oh, I'm totally gonna like. She's so like, you want to talk about setting your kids up for failure even more so than Logan, which is again is a tough goddamn sell. But she doesn't, and it definitely like becomes clear that Roman has suffered the most from that, and that's kind of why he's kind of found this thing with Gerri. But again, I have been of all the Roy siblings, right? Kendall is still probably my favorite, but I think that Roman is the one who I'm the most impressed at his growth throughout the season, because he went from just this cocky little shit that almost seemed like a parody of that type of a character, just with all the constant one-liners that he was throwing out that I just could not fucking stand, to arguably being like a character that I actually kind of felt for in a really harsh way, just like when he kept bringing up like him being locked in a dog cage and him being like fucking like potentially sexually tortured in a way that almost seemed like it was joking, but at the same time just had that little underlying veneer like kind of harshness that made you think, oh no, he wasn't joking about this, and like all the kind of shit that he went through. Like, I have a feeling that we're in for a very, very big Roman centric season, and I'm really, really impressed. All the way back to like the terrorist encounter and how he like kind of recounted that to like his siblings and like in a really like touching and heartfelt way. It's like, yeah, that actually was fucking scary and it was terrifying. And then when he manages to like surprisingly get Logan to listen to him when Laird is pushing for the business deal with the what's it called, with the Azerbaijanis, that he thinks is just a pipe dream and he doesn't think it's gonna go anywhere, and Roman and Logan actually listens to him. Like, I'm all in as far as like where Roman could go, and like I am so looking forward to seeing how he bounces off of Skarsgård this season. And I'm also just super pumped that we're getting Skarsgård back in an HBO show that hopefully won't waste him and put him in a generic part like they did with Big Little Lies. Mm. But yeah, like, oh man, like it's, let me ask you something. Who do you think stands to gain the most from this season, just in general? And that also goes with the characters we haven't talked about yet, in addition to the characters we've talked about.
Gain the most. That's just...
And it's a loaded question, because
right?
Gain the most financially, gain the most, and for like company, you think Kendall
or Greg, unless Greg just switches sides out of nowhere, which
right.
The trailers are maybe alluding to.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. Either him or up to Kendall.
It's a tricky thing, because the thing about those three characters, Kendall is constantly back and forth between being on top and being on the bottom. There doesn't seem to be any middle ground for him, and I think that's part of the reason why he's so self-destructive. Greg's whole thing is Greg is kind of pulling a Maester Pycelle, where he doesn't want to be the top dog. He doesn't have any super grand aspirations. He's just trying to survive. And because his street smarts, his kind of uncanny amount of street smarts that almost that his kind of clueless veneer almost tricks you into thinking that he doesn't have, but actually does have allowed him to make it this far and thrive. Not to mention the fact that I think it's safe to say, out of all the characters, it's pretty safe to say that the writers had his arcs etched out the best, as far as more so than any of the other characters. And so I think that's why he may not necessarily stand to gain the most, but that's why he's always kind of going to be like hanging onto the coattails and just makes it through in like the most unexpected way possible. But I honestly think that Roman could stand to gain the most, but I think that his thing with Gerri is going to bite him in the ass, because I think that Gerri is going to realize very quickly that she doesn't need him ultimately. And I think that we're going to see like a big turn from Gerri. And I think that just when Roman is going to have his moment of triumph, something's going to come out of nowhere and he's going to have a drop, just the way that Kendall did at the end of season 1. You know, I think that we could be in for something like that as far as that goes. Now let's pivot away from Roman for a second. Let's talk about Tom. Who you stated, right? Your favorite performance on the show is Matthew McFayden's performance as Tom.
Besides Jeremy Strong.
Besides Jeremy Strong.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
But like he was barely on this episode, but I liked how they used him. Because,
Well, I was going to say, talk about that for a second. Talk about Tom for a second.
Yeah, the scene where he's calling Shiv when where Brian Cox is in the middle of like, you know, picking a new CEO or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, in the bathroom. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like talking to her on the phone. And she's still just so self-serving as ever, and she's asking him if he wants to be CEO, and then he's just like, he wants to say, like, he was gonna fire me, like, fucking yesterday, so, like, what are you talking about?
That's how quickly things turn around on the show again. He's fired and rehired Frank how many goddamn times now? Like, is Tom gonna find himself in that
I just want to say one thing about Frank. Why is Frank there?
I don't know.
Like, why?
I don't know.
Like, why? Like, they're just torturing the guy. All right, just let him work for Kendall. Honestly,
seriously,
let him work, because like, if Brian Cox just wants him there to just be like, you're not trusted, then what's the point? Like what is the point?
I don't fucking know.
Like,
I am just as confused on Frank's involvement in the show now as ever, because it's like he's on Kendall's side, then he's just kind of with the crew. Now he's with Logan of all people. Okay. I mean, let's be honest. I think that right now, the only reason why he's not with Kendall is just a matter of like kind of time and place and location, where they were literally, he was still on the yacht with the rest of them when Kendall dropped the bombshell, and he kind of like probably really didn't have a choice as far as that goes, you know? So he probably just like kind of went along with it, you know? But I definitely am a little bit confused as far as Frank's placement. But again, definitely the character that got the least amount of like kind of time within this episode. So I definitely think that we could be in for something else with Frank. But also I have a bad feeling that Frank is kind of just one of those characters that ends up like kind of being one of those ones that the writers can kind of just play around with, which kind of sucks, because this is one of those shows that just proved that they didn't do that, right? There's a reason why they didn't bring Rava back in season 2. She's back now. We'll get into that. I'll admit, my heart did sink a little bit. Sorry again. I'm like, oh, great. She's back. Wonderful. And but like they kind of like, they upped Karl a little bit from like kind of just like, you know, one of Logan's many kind of backroom cronies, and he actually had like a pretty decent sized little arc in season 2 from the bore on the floor moment, which was just, oh my God, just like, again, an example to your point that this might be the new best show. That bore on the floor scene, even Game of Thrones in its wildest episodes, I don't think could come up with something like that. Like, what the fuck? Like, I still don't even know how to describe that. I saw that moment in season 2 when I was watching season 2, and I was like, what the hell is this? Like, this is so unlike anything I've ever seen before. It's so twisted. It's so Machiavellian. It's such a brute example of power, but it's so like just well crafted and fucking hilarious. And I still think it is, but I still think one of my favorite line exchanges is when he has Greg stand up and he's like, yeah, I actually do have some reservations as well. And Greg doesn't realize how close he is to being on the chopping block, because he's the one who unintentionally talked to the reporter. And he's like, oh, really? Fucking doubter. Get over there. And he's like, but the rules. And he's like, oh, rules. Well, newsflash, Greg, there are no fucking rules. That was funny. That's one of my favorite exchanges, just like ever in general. Like, obviously, just going along with like Tom, who again has 2 of the funniest one-liners I think of the show, both, you know, the closed circuit of sexual activity, or whatever that was. That of course, you know, you got to break a few in order to make a Tomlet. You got to break a few Gregs.
Yeah.
Amazing.
We here for you.
I don't know if that was a written line or an improv, but whatever the case, like bravo. It's
what about we here for you? That's fucking hilarious.
Oh my god. It's like what was the line that Roman dropped in the second episode where he's like, I think what dad meant to say is that he would prefer it more if you were born as like a toastmaster or something like that, or oh no, if he had a toastmaster for a son or something like that.
Yeah.
Something ridiculous like that. But that's just a small example of like how good these one-liners are. What was the thing that Shiv said to him in the first episode? Like date rape by Calvin Klein, something like that.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Like they're
Roman,
we'll be here all night if we just go down the myriad of Secession one-liners. But
what about when Carolina who was in the car?
Right.
Yeah, and he kicked her out of the car. I love that scene.
Yeah, that was awesome. He's like,
I
look,
love that.
I can't have any doubters here. It's like either you're in or you're out. And she's quickly like, all right, I'm out. And I love
that attitude from Kendall was making me think, okay, he's on his shit this time.
Right.
He's like he knows what he's doing. Like he doesn't want any backstabbers, nothing. He wants to control everything. He wants to slowly turn into a better version of his dad in his mind, I believe.
Right. But my question is there a better version of his dad? Because we see this happen all the time with that one guy that tries to take over from the usurper and thinks that he's going to do such this better job. And then by the time they finally get the position, they end up being either the same or worse. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's my question and my worry is, again, that's the flip side of the coin. If Kendall doesn't self-destruct, if he actually does win this battle, if he does get the CEO position, if he pulls, again, this is a horrific example, but I think the example still stands. If he pulls a Jax Teller, where, again, for those early seasons of Sons of Anarchy, when Jax was aiming for VP, but he did want to take the club in a different and better direction. And then when he gets the president job, again, totally different show. Sons of Anarchy is that type of show that will literally just make shit up on the fly just to make sure that the plot goes forward. But how he has that twist and becomes arguably worse than Ron Perlman did when he took over the top spot. Like that could also just as easily be a situation that we go with the show. And that's, again, the beauty of this show is that we are now in a position where we have no idea where this could go. And the other thing, too, that we have to look forward to is the fact that Jesse Armstrong has said this is going to be a limited run. This is not going to be one of those shows that goes on forever. It's
going to be like 4 or 5 seasons.
4 or 5 seasons, and then that's it. I think 5 is perfect. I think 4 would be just too short. I think 5 is perfect.
A clean 50 episodes if it's 10, each.
Exactly.
Yes.
Which, again, did you hear the rumor that this could be a reduced season? This could be 9 episodes?
Oh, it's going to be. Oh shit. Never mind then. Yeah, it is 9. It is 9 episodes.
Damn. I was hoping that was a Wikipedia fuck up. I was hoping so badly, but
yeah, if it's 9 episodes then, and then they make the fifth season 11 episodes.
Crazy, because I didn't even think that HBO did like more than 10 episodes. I thought HBO made it like outlawed now to do more than 10 episodes of a show now, unless it was like a miniseries.
Well, like Eastbound and Down kind of did that too, where it's like couple of the seasons were like 7 episodes each or 8 episodes.
Yeah, and The Wire did that a lot too, I know, but like I definitely know that like in more recent years that hasn't been as much of a thing. And usually if there's like an episode like kind of reduction, it usually only happens like later. So like I think the most recent example of that when that happened was Silicon Valley. I think was the last time that happened, where it went, first season was 8, then it had 10 for seasons 2 through 4, and then the last 2 seasons got the reduced episode count. So I don't know as far as where that could go.
Because it got bad.
Yeah. Man, you want to talk about another show that just plummeted completely. So I guess the only other thing that I really want to talk about as far as that goes is not necessarily where do we think it goes, but as far as like kind of, because again, this show is known for its unpredictability, but I guess like kind of what is it that you want to see come from this show, specifically this season? It's like, do you want to see Kendall trump Logan? Do you want to see Roman have that moment? Like, which of the celebrity cameos? We obviously know Sana Lathan is only the first. We know we have Hope Davis. I talked about Alexander Skarsgård.
Adrian Brody.
The one who I'm looking forward to the most, Adrian fucking Brody. We had his name dropped. We had his name dropped in the first episode because we heard his character's name. We were like, oh, Josh Aronson is online. He's obviously one of the investors in the company. We obviously have the one line, right, where they're at his mountain retreat or wherever the hell he's in, where he's like, yeah, you represent the investors as the company head, and I don't invest in blood feuds, where it's like, oh, they could have a potential problem with their investors because this thing is more personal than business savvy. And that's more than likely how Brody's going to come in. But like, man, like, We are only just at the precipice as far as what we're looking forward to. So like what moment are you looking forward to the most?
Adrian Brody and the scenes with Roman Roman and Alexander Skarsgård. I can't wait for. I'm looking forward to it because I like what Alexander Skarsgård plays, like a kind of eccentric character.
Yes.
Not like a one-dimensional asshole like on Big Little Lies.
Yeah.
Or Battleship.
Passing.
Or Battleship.
Yeah.
But yeah. I don't know. I just I'm looking forward to every part of this show, to be honest with you. And and this might be random to bring up, but I want to see what that relationship develop between Kendall and the girl from last season.
Oh, Naomi. Yeah, absolutely.
I like that. I want to see where that goes. And hopefully Rava doesn't ruin it with her fucking annoying bullshit. You opened a bottle of wine.
Yeah, that was the only moment in this episode.
Get out of here.
They brought back, obviously, right, Kendall's wife, Rava, who had not been seen since the first season, who I think was the only kind of, well, I don't know.
Was that the reason why season 2 was the best?
Possibly. Well, no, her, and then they immediately ditched Rob Yang and just dropped Walter. Too, where I'm like, fuck that guy. Like, get that guy out of there, you know?
Yes.
But I don't know, man. I saw her back, and at first I thought she was like, oh, she's got her usual, like, kind of like weird, freaky, like kind of bug-eyed, like constantly on the edge of a nervous breakdown demeanor back. I'm like, but she seemed like a little bit calmer and seemed to be like, okay, is this not going to go in the overhyped direction? And then she freaks out because, of course, the idiot Greg. And also, I feel like also she didn't have like too much of a reaction. Where first of all, okay, again, Rava, it's clear to say, was no one's favorite character on the first season. There's a reason why we haven't even brought her up. There's a reason I think why they even cut her for the first season. But I do think, again, it is a little bit auspicious where her ex-husband, who now seems to be on 18 different levels of speed, like, you know, hypothetical, you know, again, metaphorically, not actually literally, who knows, is setting up shop in her apartment, right? There's that. Then he brings his new, hotter, younger, you know, girlfriend, you know, Naomi, to the apartment. And then the fucking, again, the witless wonder, Greg, we all love, but we all know is not the brightest beam when it comes to this stuff, opens up a bottle from her godmother, you know, that Naomi asked for. You know, it's like, I don't know, like, it's probably the only instance where I'm like, okay, Rava sort of does have a little bit to her, you know, to her kind of her usual complaints, but like the rest of it, I'm like, oh man, I really, really hope this hasn't become a frequent thing, because again, like I usually don't talk a lot about like, what is it, the what is the term that they use for female characters that are only written in order to kind of like, in order to purposefully, you know, withhold the male character. It was a thing that happened a lot in the 90s and early 2000s, and then it sort of went away, but Rava was like a clear-cut example. I can't fucking remember the term.
Herring?
Wet blanket character.
Wet
blanket character. That's the one. That's the one I was trying to remember. Yeah. And Rava was the most clear-cut example of that. And again, there's a reason why they cut her, because of all the characters that just added nothing to the show. I think it was definitely her. And
because every scene just felt like the same with her, but like she didn't need, like, I guess it was kind of justified for her to be upset, but like not interrupt my ex-husband's fucking meeting with a really important lawyer type of interruption. Like, get in here she overreacted. I feel like a little bit,
right?
But
I don't know. It's just I question the decision to bring her back. I mean, I understand it from a logistical standpoint, but from a character standpoint, you could have been like, oh, she could have been out of town. Kendall could have still had a key to her place. I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to nitpick, but again, like if there was
see her,
if there was one kind of dead zone area of this, I'm like, man, of all the characters, why did they have to bring her back? You know, like I saw her name rumored that she was going to be back, and I was hoping against hope that it wasn't going to be true, and it is. But again, like that's kind of, I'll say how this show kind of handles that way better than Game of Thrones did, where Game of Thrones would sometimes just pull out characters and then throw them back in. But half the time when it got, especially when it got to the later seasons, it just felt so random and haphazard. It's like, oh, we just got to bring this character back, but you know, the rest of them we just forgot about. But like Succession just seems like so much smarter about how it utilizes its cast and its characters, that, I don't know, just a move like that feels very amateurish. And again, I'm hoping against hope that there's a reason for it, but I don't know. That again, I don't have many nitpicks. Again, it was a fantastic premiere. I absolutely cannot wait to see where the show goes from here on out. You know, we're going to be recapping this every week going forward. You know, this will be going live on Thursdays. What's it called? This Thursdays at 8 when this show will go live. And so yeah, that's kind of the only really thing that I have as far as like nitpicks go. But like, I don't know, star ratings out of 5 for this episode?
4.5.
Yeah, agreed.
This might be the best season opener for Succession.
It's definitely It's definitely the best season opener of the year, for sure.
For like a show, but like,
I
mean, for Succession in general, like this might be better than the pilot, is what I'm saying. Because the first episode of season 2, which was good, ended up being my least favorite episode of the season because
in hindsight,
it was
the weakest episode. Yeah, in hindsight, it was the weakest episode of that season. Even though I did really like that premiere as far as everything went. Although there were some great moments in that. Like, I still love the scene where Shiv is trying to, supposedly be like genuine towards Roman and compliment him, and then he's just like, "Oh, you're such a fucking bitch," and he just walks off screen because he knows that she's full of shit.
Or what about the moment in this where Roman catches her in a lie?
Oh, he's so good.
He's like, "Fuck you." Fuck
yeah,
you.
That was great. that was awesome. That was so good. That was so fucking good. I love that. I loved it. I loved every single bit of it.
Shiv is getting worse at lying too.
Absolutely, and that's again what's continuing to like in her like continued spiral towards self-destruction. In that again, she is continually to get worse and worse at lying, which is something that again she was definitely, I would say, never the best at, but she's definitely been getting worse overall as time.
It's just so obvious though. This kid, like when she was lying on the phone, like about being on the phone with Tom and shit. But I just want to see that Rob Yang character like as a homeless bum, like just scrounging for like spare change.
Right.
That's what that character deserves.
Because I know that inherently we're supposed to root for that character because it's the small dog, small startup getting bought out by the giant. Well, no, hold on. Let me finish. With getting bought out by the tech giant and everything. But the way that he just plays it is just so inherently unlikable. And I know that that's by design, but it's like
I think that's the character. I just think that's the character that they wrote. But like, from the very first scene of the show, essentially, when we see him and Kendall, he's a dick. Like he is just a dick.
And then he completely fucks Kendall over in the vote of no confidence for just seemingly no reason. And it's not a situation of where it's I mean, Stewie too, definitely. But Stewie, it's like, okay, Stewie doesn't really as much have a dog in the fight is the thing. But Rob Yang definitely, after Kendall,
and he's the one who got him. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. That's the one that makes no sense. It's like, this is the guy who brought you in.
Because he hates him that much for no reason. He doesn't even know him. And then Kendall's trying to be nice to him. Yeah, he's a little, goofy, but like he's trying to be nice to him, like genuinely. But then the guy keeps bringing up his dad, and then by the time and Kendall,
not gonna lie, probably the most satisfying moment for me of season 2 was when Kendall gutted them. The most satisfying moment, because I'm just like,
Kendall didn't want to do that
either.
No,
he did it. That's
the fact that he did it. Like it made it badass too. Like it was just badass.
Cold-blooded and so efficient about it too. And I'm like, fuck yeah.
That was the one thing I agreed with Logan on. Yes. This whole show is just
absolutely.
Why is he even here?
Again, it's like, and I talked to you about this too. It's like season 1 cleaning up for the sin, season 2 cleaning up for the problems of season 1. Again, Rava gone, Rob Yang and Walter gone. And now they bring back Rava, and I'm like, oh no. But again, like I'm holding out hope. Again, could not be more looking forward to it. We're 1 episode in, and this is already my favorite show of the year, just in general. I'm so glad we're back. Most definitely. And again, we'll be back next week to cover episode 2. That was our recap of episode 1, Secession. I see what you did there with the titles. Dustin, where can the good people find you on the interwebs?
They can find me on Letterboxd. I'm Dustin Mason, Duster on Letterboxd, and Twitter, I'm Duster. Mr. G Movie Reviews on YouTube. Check me out.
Absolutely. You can follow me at Movie Nerd Reviews on Facebook and Instagram. But more importantly, you can follow us on the Talkin TV podcast pages, Facebook and Instagram. Go there to follow us and keep updated on everything we've got going on. Also, if you click the subscribe button, click the bell next to it, click the like button, all of the things that you see on the screen, just in general, you can continue to help us give you guys new content so that we can continue to recap the shows that we love. It's been a minute since we've done a TV recap, but I could not be looking more forward to. Like the minute that I found out that Succession was coming back, I immediately hit up Dustin and I'm like, Dustin, you in? And you were like, I'll make it work. And I'm like, fuck yeah, let's go.
I wanted to do a Succession podcast last year, and you were like, no. And then you were like, let's talk about Transformers.
The only reason why is because we didn't have a new Succession, and I felt like the moment had passed. That's the only reason why. And I wasn't sure when we were getting season 3, but I knew
I was binging it again because of the COVID, and I wanted to watch it again. So
that was when I watched it the first time. That was the first time that I watched it. I finally caught up on it. So
I gotta talk about that now.
It's like I need it, but no, it's back now, and we are back with it. We'll be coming to you guys every single week, Thursdays at 8:00 p.m. Be sure to tune in. We'll be back next week.
I'm sorry for sounding like a sociopath on this episode.
Don't ever apologize for being you.
Yeah, but that just this show does that to me. I don't know. Bye.
We'll see you guys next time.